Today, we're going to talk about something that, unfortunately, I am really good at. My personality style lends to me always evaluating people. In fact, I like to think if I wasn't a pastor, I would love to coach. I'd love to coach basketball or tennis. And so for me, I'm always thinking through, here's how this person would fit here, and here's their strengths and weaknesses. Well, one time my family was waiting in the airport to board our plane. And I noticed at another gate that there was this guy who was checking people through. And this guy had this infectious personality. I mean, he would take their ticket. He was looking at each person in the eyes, big smile. He would say, "Have a great flight. We're honored you chose us." And he wasn't just saying it. He was so sincere about it. So I'm watching this. And so I just get up. I leave my family without even telling them where I was going. And I go over to him and I just have this conversation. "Hey, I've been watching you. And I've been watching you serve people. You are so great at your job. I love how you talk to people, look at them in the eye. I would love to hire you." I love evaluating people, which is good when it's at and for work, but it's not good when you treat the people closest to you as if they are work. Because then it goes from honest evaluating to being harmful and hurtful criticism. Today, the one thing that we're going to talk about that'll make any relationship healthier is being less critical and more kind. Anyone else struggle with this like I do in my relationships? And if you're with someone, please don't look at them. I want to begin with our big idea that we're going to walk through today. Here's our big idea. Criticism is the kryptonite of relationships. For those of you who aren't superhero fans, kryptonite was the one thing that could bring down Superman. And there's nothing that brings down relationships like criticism, because criticism at its core says, "I'm better than you." Now, fortunately, Jesus weighed in on this. And what he said about it is actually something that we've probably heard before because it has become one of the most popular and most quoted teachings of Jesus. But it's also one of the most misunderstood of his teachings. Even if you're not a Bible person, you are more than likely familiar with these words. Here's what Jesus said. "Do not judge." Now, can we just say that out loud together? And I want you to say it loud and proud, and I want you to point your finger like this, okay? Are you ready? Let's say it. Do not judge. Yeah, that's right. Don't ever tell someone around you that what they're doing is wrong and that they need help or that you're going to help correct them. Don't you ever do that. That's easy enough, right? Don't judge, period. Message over. I wish it were that simple. And is this really what Jesus meant? No, this is not what Jesus meant. Because he didn't say don't judge, period. He said don't judge, comma. In other words, he wanted to have a conversation about criticism. Let's begin our conversation by taking a look at that word judge. What does Jesus mean by don't judge, comma? Well, the meaning of the word judge Jesus uses has a wide range of meaning to it. On one side, it can mean to evaluate, to help someone, to correct them. On the other side, it can mean don't condemn and attack someone. Well, we know Jesus doesn't mean the first one, because a few chapters later, he talks about how we're to approach someone who is walking in sin. And just from a practical standpoint, we just know how important it is to have people who can speak into our lives, because we all have blind spots. And these blind spots are hurting both ourselves and others, and we don't even realize it. This is one of the reasons why we want everyone to have just a few faith-building friends in their lives, a small group of people who have the freedom to speak into our blind spots. Otherwise, we'll keep living with those blind spots. And why would you want to do that? So what did Jesus mean when he said, don't judge, comma? He meant don't have a critical or condemning attitude. You ever been corrected by someone where you were utterly condemned? You ever condemn someone else? According to Jesus, it all comes down to our attitude and approach. So Jesus begins the conversation by saying, don't judge, comma. Then he adds some more color to this to help us out when he says, do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Honestly, these verses make me feel very uncomfortable because Jesus is clearly teaching what I call the boomerang effect. And here's the boomerang effect. Whatever level you dish out the judgment, the same exact level will come back to you eventually. Now, who will dish it back? I'm not really sure, but I think it's safe to assume both God, which is very uncomfortable to think about, and other people, which I think begs a very important question that I think all of us need to wrestle with. If the boomerang effect is true, and you'll be judged according to how you judge others, how do you want to be judged? Here's how I believe most of us would answer this. If you're going to judge me, I want you to judge me based on my intentions. Have you ever said to someone, hey, just cut me some slack. I'm going through a tough time right now. Or I'm just having a bad day. I can't tell you how many times I've said my version of this to my wife, Donna. We say these things because I want you to judge me based on my intentions. And the reason that is because intentions include all sorts of things. They include my motives and my past, my family, my situation, my current level of stress. I mean, I want you to take into account more than just my actions. I want you to take into account everything about me. I mean, isn't that how we want to be judged? Of course it is. Then why is it so hard for us to offer the same kind of grace and kindness to other people? There's a simple reason for this. We judge others for their actions, but we judge ourselves for our intentions. We judge others for their actions. I mean, think about the things that we say about others. Can you believe they did that? What is wrong with them? How could they? But we judge ourselves for our intentions. Think about the things we say about ourselves. Oh, I didn't mean to. It was an accident. That's just not like me. I'm a good person. I do this all the time. In the past year, just trying to lead our church well through all the stuff that has happened, just feeling the burden for our staff and for you and for our community. There'd be times I would come home and just all this weight on my shoulders, and I would be really short with Donna. And I just want her to say, you know, honey, I get it. You're going through a lot right now. But then she is short with me, and my reaction is, what's wrong with you? You need to get over it. The good news is Jesus knew that we would struggle with this. And if you're not a Jesus follower, it's one of the reasons I think you should consider being one. Because Jesus knew we would struggle with certain things, and he would never condemn us for it. Rather, he would follow up with something that would really help us. And he does that here. And he does it by giving us a parable that uses hyperbole and humor. Here's what Jesus says. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eyes and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, hey, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? We think Jesus is talking about sin comparison. And if their sin is small compared to mine, then we just lay low. If it's bigger, then speak up. But that's not what Jesus is saying. Here's what he is saying. Every time you see something in someone else's life, there's a plank in your eye. In other words, the people most eager to tell other people about their faults are the very people who should take a long look in the mirror before they do. You see, our tendency is to compare our sin and our stuff to other people's stuff. And their stuff is so big and it's so bad, and ours is just so small and so insignificant compared to it. And Jesus is saying, and this is where it gets really challenging for us, we need to reverse that. Our sin and our stuff should look big like a plank compared to theirs, which is small like a speck. Now, our tendency is to push back against this, and I get that because, honestly, I don't like this. But if we're truly honest with ourselves, we know things about ourselves that we've never told anyone else. Things that if anyone knew, we would be so ashamed. And we've been forgiven of that. I didn't know this until recently, but they have these mirrors that magnify your face over 5 times. Ladies, you probably have one of these. So I look at my face in the bathroom mirror and I'm like, Mark, you are like a fine wine. You just get better with age. First time I looked in the magnifying mirror, I was like, yikes, this wine has soured. I think this is what Jesus is saying. When you look at your own life, it should magnify reality. You understand how large the issues are in your own life. Now, what Jesus talks about, Jesus followers should not have any problem with this because all of us have pretty much the same story. And our story goes something like this. I was living however I wanted. I deserved condemnation from Jesus or to be judged, as he said. But instead of getting what I deserved, I received grace and forgiveness. And so Jesus is not saying we shouldn't have tough conversations or we shouldn't deal with real problems and blind spots in our relationships. He's saying that when we're aware of the messiness of our own stories, it should change how we approach them. That instead of criticizing or condemning them, I approach you how I've been approached. Because the truth is, I'm no better than you.